for joining us. So for those that didn't know, Andrew founded flatmates.com.au. He owns Student Super and a whole raft of other businesses, and he's here to talk to us today about his journey.
Sure, no problem.
Awesome. So most people have heard of flatmates.com.au. It's actually Australia's largest share accommodation website, and you currently own Student VIP, which is the biggest student website in the country, and also highschooltutors.com.au. So all these businesses revolve around young people. So where did this passion come from?
The main one I work on now is Student Super.
Yeah.
So passion for young people. To be honest, it was not particularly passion. It was necessity, because I started when I was a young person. I went to University of New South Wales, studied an arts degree, a business degree, a bit of philosophy, a bit of economics, and it really took a long time to get out of university. I struggled a lot with the maths, actually. Quantitative methods 1A was a challenge for me, a multi-semester, multi-year challenge. So in the end, I had a lot of experience in being a uni student. And so when I was kind of bizarrely lucky, there was a recession on. No one remembers what a recession looks like. We haven't had one since I was at university, which is 30 years ago. But we had a recession, so I couldn't get a job. And so in my final year of university, I was doing an honours degree, and I didn't want to work in a restaurant anymore. And so I started up this little tiny business to finance these newfangled devices called computers, and started up a computer finance program with Combank, Apple. Apple by then was a tiny little company that specialized in education, so it wasn't the huge company it was today. But yeah, it was a pretty crazy thing that as an 18-year-old, I managed to get a meeting with a really senior guy at Combank. From that, a really senior person at Apple, and convinced them that this uni student could coordinate a financial product. Looking back, I have no idea how that happened. Like, it's made no sense. So suddenly I had a business that was for uni students to finance computers. As students, computers and laptops were coming in big time in education, and they're very expensive. So that's where I started, and everything just was a little step from that. So I ended up with a whole bunch of businesses that solve problems for young people. But the origin of it really was I was just a young person. I'm not anymore.
Young at heart. Young at heart. So your current baby, studentsuper.com.au, it's hard to get people to think about retirement, like let alone young people. So this is quite a challenging change management exercise. You're changing mindsets, changing behaviors, but yet you've been able to grow. So how have you been able to achieve that behavioral shift?
Cool. Okay, so I'll just do a little bit of the segue. We sold Flatmates to realestate.com.au, and at that point I could have retired. It was kind of like, actually, that was pretty big, and it could have been just go on holidays and sail around the Mediterranean. But I really had always, it bugged me how superannuation just seemed to completely forget young people. Not entirely the superannuation industry's fault, because young people also didn't care about super. So there was two groups of people who care about this thing, and it was pretty messy for young people. Like most Australians typically mess up their first 10 years of super, and they wake up at 28 and go, oh my god, I need to tidy up my super. I've got 5 different accounts and I didn't pay attention. So that was the genesis of Student Super. But to your question, hugely, you have no idea how important. You've just gone to the heart of our insights about Student Super. You said to me how people don't think about retirement. How do you change their mindset and change their behavior? The answer is, we did all the research. It was very clear that people did not care about retirement. I sat in so many focus groups before we launched Student Super, where we would say, hi everyone, what do you imagine happens after retirement? And it came down to basically 2 answers. One answer was you die, and the second answer was you go on a cruise, and then you die. And it's true, and it's quite, and from a psychological point of view, talking about retirement, it's towards the end of your life discussion. Inherent in the discussion is that word end of your life, and there's a deep part in your brain, especially when you're 18, that says
don't want to think about
Don't want to think about it.
Yeah.
And in fact, it's quite funny if you talk to a lot of young people about when do you imagine you will die. It's a fun conversation. Hey, welcome to Focus Group. So when do you think you're going to die? But if you do talk, if you're a pub or something, a lot of young people will tell you a very strange answer. They will say, "Oh, I'm going to die young. I'm going to die at 35." And it's like a really strange answer. Like, they don't say it like it's a bad thing. But what's happening in their brain is they actually just cannot imagine themselves being older than 35.
Yeah.
So that must be the end.
Yeah.
It's really funny. Yeah. And in fact, there's a lot of, it goes back to science actually, there's a lot of study in the last decade about when your brain stops growing. And you used to think it was around 18, maybe 21, and now it's gone out to 25.
Right.
And prefrontal cortex does not finish growing until you're 25, and that is the piece of your brain that is good at thinking about the future. So the correlation, I'll get back to actually a question pretty soon. No science, but it is an interesting correlation that people start thinking about super, which is a retirement-related product.
Yeah.
At about the same time as their prefrontal cortex is finally finished.
Yeah.
And the classic experiment I do is I go, I don't ask people when they think they're going to die, but I'll go into a high school and say, do you have a diary? The diary is just a device to plan the future. And I don't care if it's an electronic or a physical. Amongst high school kids, it seems about 30% will have a diary.
Okay.
And the other 70% just kind of plan on
Wing it.
Tomorrow,
Yeah.
This weekend, I know what I'm doing, and after that, and then you go to university and it increases to the ratio flips. There's about a third of uni students who don't have any device to look at the future, no diary. And it's quite interesting, but by the time they're 25, they're much more comfortable thinking about the future. So to your point, the core insight, when we did all this study and realized, wow, people do not want to talk about retirement, there was two ways we can go. Well, how do we change that? But the big insight we had is we can't change that. And you asked me, how do I change the attitude? How do I change the behavior? Well, actually, we've thought about it in a lot of these discussions. We actually want to just change the behavior. Yeah, we just want to set you up so you have a great retirement. We don't need to reset your brain and have you think about retirement at 18. We just want you to do the right things at 18. You'll then realize at 30 going, wow, wasn't it good I got my super organized at 18? And I don't know why they got their super organized. So the insight we had is don't try and change what is a deeply held, the piece of the brain doesn't work that thinks about the future. They don't want to think about death. It is impossible to try and get, they're not impossible, there are some 18-year-old kids who are future thinking, but the insight of the entire business was don't try and change the mindset that is deeply held. Change the behavior. And so then the question was, right, what do we want you to do to make sure you don't waste the first decade of superannuation? Really simple. The list is very small.
Yeah.
Number one, tell your super fund you've got a tax file number, because if you don't, 50% of your profits, your earnings, your money goes to tax others. Number two, have one fund, not five. Paying 5 sets of fees, why not just pay one? So the list was very small of the things you need to do to say, tick, at 18, my super is organized. Now you don't actually have to think about it. So in our website, you'll never see the word retirement. And the only time we mention it is when we're legislatively required to say the word.
Right, yeah.
So we talk about, the little shift in attitude was most young people we spoke to really didn't kind of think of super as their money. It was like, it was me in the future money, or, and a lot of them actually would look at the payslip and say, well, the tax goes out and the super goes out. So super some kind of tax, is it? And it's like, no, that's your money. It's like, where is it? It's in an account, like a bank account. Well, I don't have that. Well, yes, you should. So you have these conversations and so the only thing we really tried to shift was, it's your money. And if you recognize it's your money, don't you think we should get it organized? And it's like, okay. And we just never talk about why you're doing this. We just say, it's your money, let's get it organized now. And then go on and think about the rest of your life. So that was, don't change the attitude, change the behavior, because I really didn't think we could change